First in our news, our President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. emphasized the importance of adherence to rules-based international order to settle disputes. He was speaking before the world leaders during the 77th session of the UN General Assembly. That and more from Janesh Agaga, New York, from our New York Bureau. Janesh.
The president presented the country's vision of people-centered development, highlighting his administration's thrust for recovery after years of pandemic-related lockdowns. He affirmed the Philippines' commitment to the ideals of the UN, citing the organization's role in fostering international dialogue and cooperation. He explained the role the Philippines plays as a responsible member of the family of nations in addressing these concerns.
By shepherding the Manila Declaration of 1982, we helped affirm that differences should only be resolved through peaceful means. By reinforcing the predictability and stability of international law, particularly the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, we provided an example of how states should resolve their differences through reason and through right. These two contributions provide useful guidance for our time. For amidst challenging global tides, an important ballast stabilizes our common vessel. That is, our open, inclusive, and rules-based international order that is governed by international law and informed by the principles of equity and of justice. As I have underscored, the Philippines shall continue to be a friend to all and an enemy of none. This world order traces its roots to 77 years ago. Your first Asian predecessor, Mr. President, General Carlos P. Romulo, called on our leaders then to make this floor our last battlefield, to determine in this hall whether humanity is to survive or be wiped out in another Holocaust. Our peoples chose survival. They chose cooperation. They chose peace. And by doing so, they made history.
He said climate change is the greatest threat affecting our nations and peoples.
The time for talk about if and when has long since passed. It is here. It is now. Climate change is the greatest threat affecting our nations and our peoples. There is no other problem so global in nature that it requires a united effort, one led by the United Nations. The effects of climate change are uneven and reflect an historical injustice. Those who are least responsible suffer the most. The Philippines, for example, is a net carbon sink. We absorb more carbon dioxide than we emit. And yet, we are the fourth most vulnerable country to the effects of climate change. This injustice must be corrected. We call on industrialized countries to immediately fulfill their obligations under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, to cut their greenhouse gas emissions, provide climate financing and technology transfer for adaptation for the most vulnerable and developing countries, to lead by example.
He also said the development of advanced technologies is rapidly transforming human life and experience.
The imminent diffusion of these emerging technologies could solve many of our old problems, but they could also disrupt our political and social orders. Our governance structures must keep up.
He said Filipinos have achieved significant strides on our path to sustainable development despite the challenges of the pandemic.
Despite the challenges of the pandemic and the global economic upheavals, we remain on track to reach upper middle income status by next year. With steady investment in food, public health, education, and other social services, we expect to become a moderately prosperous country by 2040. I am confident that we will achieve this vision. We need the United Nations to continue to work. And we, the Philippines, are determined to be part of that solution. Multilateralism and international cooperation do make a difference. Filipino health workers were at the front lines in many countries to curb the spread of the virus, risking and oftentimes sacrificing their own lives to save those of others.
He said to attain food self-sufficiency and security, the Philippines is providing innovative solutions and financial support to farmers and fisher folk.
We must seek solutions that preserve our planet. These solutions must transcend our time and win the future for the succeeding generations. This requires investment in food security, the fragility of which has been clearly demonstrated by the pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine. We need to take concrete steps towards a modern and resilient agriculture. For food is not just a trade commodity, nor is it just a livelihood. It is an existential imperative and a moral one. To attain food self-sufficiency and security, we are providing innovative solutions and financial support to farmers and fisherfolk to adapt new technologies and connect to national and global value supply chains.
In science, he said knowledge and discovery remain the keys to unlock the potential of our dynamic future.
Encouraging our young people's curiosity, honing their skills, and protecting their intellectual properties are important investments. The Philippines is preparing for the future by laying the governance framework that will allow us to harness the power of renewable energy, develop the capacity to utilize the life sciences such as medicine and virology, pursue digital solutions towards a more modern economy, and expand our presence in outer space. But we need to start by defining the norms of responsible behavior in cyberspace and outer space, and forming legal rules that will prevent the weaponization of artificial intelligence. The diffusion of cutting-edge technology across the economy is promising, but they could come at a cost. Our development agenda must consider the possible displacement of human labor as a result of advances in automation. We must prepare our economic structures for this. We should start building the necessary supports for those sectors affected.
Janesh Chagagas, Eagle News, New York, New York. We live in extraordinary times.